Okay, so there's a lady calls her site Roma Army Men's Rights. This is what men need. Men are not allowed to defend themselves. Men are not allowed to say these things. But the fact is, this lady is right. Now, this doesn't just apply to Johnny Depp. I'm sure that the lady that he's recorded with him talking to, and we'll get into that once I start playing this video, she goes over many of the tactics that have been used by law enforcement as well as by people who work for law enforcement. Now, obviously, if I get angry, I'm a bad person. If I walk away, I'm a bad person. If I do anything at all, no matter what it is that I do, I must be in the wrong. I must be the predator. I must be the one who's not doing the right thing. My safety issues and my safety concerns are long term and ongoing. And the things that the Dual County Sheriff's Department, including Sheriff DaCosta and his deputies and Leslie Snell, have done repeatedly are illegal and immoral. But without someone there in person to be there to see it, to hear it, and to verify it, what chance do I have? Now, for me to speak out about the crimes that have been committed against me and the abuse that I have endured, it is a risky business. I mean, obviously, there's literally nothing that I can do to get an honest court date. No matter what, the judges are going to hand them what they want on a silver platter, ignoring any and all evidence and denying the allowance of any such evidence. The judge didn't look or review any evidence at all. I spent 7 months incarcerated, including being sent to prison because I was charged with misdemeanors for trying to turn in my predators. Saying that they are predatory is not against the law. However, this is the Nebraska court system, especially in western Nebraska. They don't care about the fucking law. It doesn't make any difference what the law says. It matters what the pretty white girl says. The pretty blonde haired, blue eyed white girl. What did she say? Well, that must be right because it's a pretty blonde haired, blue eyed white girl. Now I'm going to play this. This is with a man that many of you know and have heard of. This is Johnny Depp. I've literally heard women say to me that they wish Johnny Depp would rape them. Do you know how screwed up that is? Do you know how messed up a mentality someone has to say something sick like that? Well, let's play this.
What's up, guys? It's your girl, Chloe Roma, and today we are going to be talking about the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp situation. Now, I've touched on this a little bit on the past. I think I made like 2 videos about it, speaking about it. However, I never really went into it in detail. So I'm going to be doing that for you guys today. What I'm going to be teaching you about is gaslighting. Heck of a lot about manipulation because, oh my God, she's full of it. Stonewalling, again, she's full of it. I'm going to teach you guys about all that. I'm going to break it down bit by bit, point exactly where it is to you guys. And can I just say that one thing that I learned from really sitting and like breaking down this audio is that men and women are eerily similar when it comes to being toxic, abusive, stonewalling, manipulation, gaslighting, because so many of the things.
Meanwhile, these are all of the tactics that law enforcement is taught, as well as how to physically harm you and play victim. In many cases, they use hospitals to get away with this. Many cases. When you are trying to turn in your predators and they turn off their body cameras, or they charge you with crimes that were never committed, or they refuse to investigate the crimes or refuse to allow you the paperwork, it's a major issue. Now, obviously, with this Judge Weimer, he had already decided before court started, and he was only going through the motions because at this point he legally did have to. But also, my disabilities only exist when it is in the favor of law enforcement. And my disabilities do not exist in the courts when it does not favor law enforcement. And they cannot do this. It's one or the other. And this is not what they've done. They call into question my sanity so they can pretend that I'm schizophrenic and imagining the assaults. Now, by preventing the body camera evidence from being seen or admitted in as evidence, they get away with their crimes. And then there's the fact that, well, they get to utilize jurisdiction. Give you an example. In the situation with, God, what's that woman's name? Amanda Jonas, who is a police officer in Longmont. When I was trying to turn in the abuse by the Longmont Police Department, as well as the abuse in the hospital, it didn't matter that what they did was illegal. They assigned one of the officers who had broken the law on that day to that case. One of the very officers that I was trying to turn in was the one who was assigned to that case. This is a conflict of interest. It is illegal. What they did by taking me to the hospital and assaulting me at the hospital and utilizing the staff there and lying to the staff, telling the staff members that I was schizophrenic. This is more than just stonewalling. This is gaslighting. Police departments stonewall you and attempt intimidation tactics as their protocol. The only thing that you can do to defend yourself against this, there are two things that you can do. One, go in with somebody else, and two, record it. Now, I recorded these things, so obviously I did something right. But despite my recordings, I'm not allowed to turn these people in. The FBI is stonewalling me. The Nebraska State Patrol is gaslighting and stonewalling me. And by gaslighting, what I'm talking about is that they are supposed to do something and investigate the crimes against me by Scott DaCosta. And in the recordings, Scott DaCosta, bad day. Yes, I'm screaming. Yes, I am very angry. I am also very scared. Because all this time, Nebraska State Patrol has done absolutely nothing to investigate those crimes. And then, as soon as I start talking to, what's that woman's name? Sergeant Jones, she immediately starts stonewalling me and gaslighting and deflecting. Immediately.
Things that I heard come out of her mouth, I've heard come out of, my own ex's mouths. And I feel like there's a lot of people that is going to listen to this and be like, oh my God, yep, I've heard that before, And so I hope what this video does is it breaks down and it shows you guys that we're not as different as we would like to think we are. That's about it. So let's get into it.
We're very different. Girls are taught they can get away with it because they can.
Asking her what they're going to do.
Kind of like they're taught to turn on the waterworks when they get pulled over.
Stuff is really toxic. It's going nowhere. It's at a dead end. What are they going to do? Let's start.
Seeing a counselor's not just start doing it. It's not alone. We gotta change how we do things. And I want to trust you, and I feel like all the trust is gone. All the fucking trust is gone in the relationship because you keep splitting.
So, first, I think it's really important to acknowledge here the first part that she said about the counselor. She goes,
so if he leaves, he did something wrong.
It's too long. We need to do something now. So what she's really saying, though,
if he stays and takes abuse, he's doing something wrong.
That's not long. That's
no
not
matter what, everything he does is wrong.
What she's saying is that that's too much work. She doesn't want to put that work in. She wants to have something immediate now. She goes on to say, I want to trust you, but the trust is gone because you split. So she says that she can't trust him because he won't stick around when he starts to feel unsafe. Again, that's huge manipulation, because what she's saying is basically, despite whether you feel safe or not, I need you to stay. No.
I'm not gonna be in a physical fucking altercation with you.
Then don't.
You fucking hit me last night. You fucking.
What about all the other times you split?
So here he goes, I don't want to be in a physical altercation with you. And she goes, then don't. Again, I can do whatever I want to you, and you can't do it back to me. That, ladies and gentlemen, is class A narcissism. That is a huge narcissistic trait. It's the people that can, like I just said, they can do whatever they want to you. They can say whatever they want. But as soon as you dare say something back, question what they just said, or say that what they said was hurtful, oh my God. So in their eyes, you're just supposed to take it because they're not in the wrong. You're wrong for trying to separate yourself. That's power and control. So then he goes, what about last night? You fucking hit me last night. And she doesn't address it whatsoever. She goes, what about all the other times you split? So he goes, what about the fact that you hit me last night? And she goes, what about all the other times you ran away? What? So that's called stonewalling. Stonewalling is the refusal to communicate properly, lots of deflection, right? So instead of addressing the problem head on, addressing your comment, they will deflect it. They will bounce it off of you. You think about taking a ball, you throw them the ball. His ball is, well, you hit me last night. Hers is, what about all the other times you did? Right? Whereas she should have accepted that and said, something like, you're right, acknowledged it. She should have at least acknowledged it. She didn't acknowledge it whatsoever.
Come on, you cannot act like that. It's about that. It's not.
Well, on a plane, I can't split.
No, and you hit back. So don't act like you don't fucking participate.
I pushed you.
I would just like to point out that throughout this whole clip, Amber Heard shows lots of signs of narcissistic stonewalling. So her comment there, don't pretend that that's what this is about. It's a much different thing. So, don't pretend that you're upset about me hitting you. Don't pretend that our marriage is, shit because I hit you. It's a much bigger thing. Is stonewalling. So again, it's deflecting instead of saying, yeah, you're right. It's don't pretend it's about that. But it's also narcissistic because narcissistic people, they can never be wrong, right? And so that's why they stonewall so many times. They avoid, because as soon as they feel like they're coming close to being exposed for being wrong, they don't want to go near that. So there's no such thing as, you're right and I'm wrong for them. So that's why she says, no, it's a much bigger thing, so that she doesn't have to hold herself accountable for the choice that she made.
Deflection. That's right. And stonewalling and gaslighting. These are all things that I have had to deal with. These are things that every homeless man has to deal with if he tries to turn in law enforcement. This is things that most men have to deal with if they try to turn in physical abuse from a woman. Now, according to James Payton, and of course, there's videos with him on here as well, he is a very big man. Now, the story that was told by Jamie Curtis versus the story that is told by James Payton are very different. According to James Payton, Jamie Curtis assaulted him first. Chris Stegman affirmed that he was assaulted on more than one occasion by Jamie Curtis. If a man pushes a woman off of him, then that is considered assault. But her beating on his face for half an hour, like what happened to Christopher Tapp, that's not considered assault. See, Christopher Tapp, by Tammy's own admission, all Christopher Tapp did was push her off of him because she was hitting him over and over and over and over. By her own admission, he didn't hit her back. And also by her own admission, the Boulder Police Department pressured her into making false statements. Now, the situation that I'm dealing with is, well, people who think that they're above the law, that by deflecting, that it makes what they did okay. Now, that's not just the case with Scott DaCosta. That is also the case with Leslie Snell. Like, if she plays victim, then magically her crimes never existed, and they absolutely do exist. The evidence of it is on my YouTube channel. The evidence that she was aware that I was being harassed and threatened by the telephone from restricted numbers. Leslie Snell was aware of that. There are multiple 911 calls and calls to Dual County Sheriff's Department about this harassment. And Leslie Snell is the one who picks up the phone. She is aware that these things are happening. There's also the fact that Scott DaCosta himself has admitted that Leslie Snell was angry with me because I posted these things up on the internet, because I posted those calls up on the internet. That shows motive. But the situation in the courts shows that even the courts are stonewalling. This is blatant sexism by the courts, and that is a bias-based crime. That means that the courts literally committed a hate crime against me. How is that okay? Meanwhile, the American public wants to assume that all white males are rich congressmen making the laws. And that simply is not the case. Now, by denying me the right to face my accusers safely, by creating an environment at the courthouse where it is unsafe for me to even try to turn in my predators, by allowing this stonewalling and this gaslighting to continue until I have a meltdown or a mental breakdown, and then pretending that I am a criminal for being abused until I reach that point, man, I got to tell you, it don't look good for them. And these are classic narcissistic behaviors. And who is it that is going for these law enforcement jobs nowadays? Narcissists and psychopaths. Now, another classic technique is to play victim. Me, I'm trying to get heard in court, but with them denying the existence of actual evidence or reversing the roles, they're showing that it is only okay one way. Scott DaCosta can utilize every police jurisdiction around Dual County. He can utilize Cheyenne County Sheriff's Department, Cheyenne County Police Department, Garden County Sheriff's Department, Scottsbluff County Sheriff's Department. And these aren't the only ones. He has access to the blue wall of bullshit, the Stonewall. When you try to turn in a cop, these are standard procedures. We have literally hundreds upon hundreds of examples of this bullying, of this harassment. When a person goes in to turn in an officer, even if they know the law, well, we'll have to post some of them up, won't we? Except they're already up there. All of you have seen them. This is the way that it is in reality. Women are allowed to be the toxic one in a relationship. They are allowed to be abusive. They are allowed to be physically abusive. They are allowed to have their friends get involved in the harassment, threats, and stalking. Meanwhile, what chance does their victim have? What chance does their victim have against that? None. Especially when those people are friends with one another and the courts are familiar. Scott DaCosta, when he writes down in that paperwork that, well, he tries to mislead the situation to make it seem like I'm a criminal, a horrible, horrible criminal that he has to talk to all the time for his horrible criminal activities. And in reality, most of those calls were about abuse that I was trying to turn in. Most of those situations where he showed up, I was trying to turn in him or his deputies. I was utilizing the correct and proper course of action. I was utilizing the way that the law is written and who I am supposed to go to. But by deflecting, by pretending that I am the predator, by claiming that I am threatening their lives, in specific, Leslie Snell pretending that, she has evidence that I was not threatening her life, and yet, because she is a pretty blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl in western Nebraska who works for the Dual County Sheriff, she automatically wins. She did know that it was being recorded. She knows that I record all of the calls to them for my safety. And there are numerous calls to the Dual County Sheriff's Department where that is very clearly stated. But what does she do about it? She abuses her position. And of course, the sheriff that I'm trying to turn in, she works for, obviously he's going to do everything that he can to help her. Now, I wonder how Amber felt about this recording being played. I'm sure she wasn't fucking happy. But that's the situation that I'm dealing with Marcia Estrada very heavily. They want to ignore everything. They want to go back far enough that it justifies what they did, but not back far enough that the full story is shown. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. The truth is, we didn't start looking for housing the day that Penny Cooper got sick. We started with the housing thing at least 3 months prior. So no, they don't get to play that game. These specific safety issues of me having to stay here in Dual County and having to worry about the Dual County Sheriff's Department. Meanwhile, he utilized all of these places that they're wanting me to go. He utilized law enforcement in Cheyenne County. He utilized law enforcement in Scottsbluff County. And these are the places they're wanting me to move. Now, obviously, those safety issues and those safety risks are still there, and they are still present in those places. And I do need to turn in the crimes that were committed against me, including the stonewalling, the narcissism, the psychotic behavior by these officers, and this playing victim bullshit. I mean, Scott DaCosta is really relying heavily on the bullshit with Leslie Snell, relying extremely heavily on it. She's a pretty blonde-haired, blue-eyed white girl. This is our picturesque victim. He couldn't have found a better pretendy victim if he wanted to. Meanwhile, there is no evidence of threats of bodily harm or threats of death against Leslie Snell. She wanted to take one little snippet out of a video that is literally about how I'm not willing to do those things, about how that is not a solution. And I explained that to the judge. But he didn't want to hear it. He was not interested. Automatically, her word versus mine, that is the situation there. And then he wanted to be an asshole about the fact that I wasn't in court. First of all, it was unsafe for me to even try to drive there. Second of all, I had to leave Dual County for my own safety so that they wouldn't arrest me on bogus charges and prevent me from being allowed to go to court. Because they have done this repeatedly. It is not against the law for me to speak out about corruption, about the nasty little tricks that they used to prevent me from having access to those body cameras and turning them in. Now, Marcia Estrada, the evidence that I showed her, it shows that yes, it is a conflict of interest. It shows by the admission of both Tara Smith as well as William Burr. I'm sorry. That's William Barr is the former deputy in Denver, and William Burr is the Nebraska State Patrolman here. By both Tara Smith and William Burr's admissions, I went to both of them in 2018. By both of their admissions in those recordings. And no one ever got back to me about it. Now that right there, that shows long-term stonewalling. Long-term. So, of course, the parts that Marcia Estrada, being as, well, her coworker Penny Cooper, doesn't want to get in trouble. Well, her partner, Penny Cooper, broke the law. Now, a lot of times what they want to do is talk over you, deflect, and try to change the line of questioning to something other than what it is that you have them for. The abuse in Dual County is specifically what I was talking to Tara Smith about. But she wanted to deflect. Is that okay? Now, these people who want to play victim because I recorded conversations with them and posted it up, that is also not against the law. And, of course, the recording with Johnny Depp there, I'm sure that Amber was not happy about that recording coming out. And you see how she tries to talk over him about how anything that he does to avoid conflict, to avoid physical violence, is wrong in her eyes. It's wrong in Amber's eyes for him to walk away from the situation. It is wrong in Amber's eyes for him to push her away when she is physically assaulting him. She continually refuses to address the issue at hand, refuses to answer those questions of his, refuses to acknowledge the pain and suffering that is inflicted upon him by her. Everything is his fault no matter what in her eyes. And that is how we teach girls in the United States to be, by allowing them to continually play victim when they and their friends are harming an innocent person. He doesn't want to have sex with you. He doesn't want to date you anymore. So you pretend that he stalked you, pretend that he assaulted you, or pretend that he is a child molester. That's right. These are very common tactics for women in the United States, and we have trained them to be narcissists. A pretty blonde-haired, blue-eyed white girl puts on the waterworks, woo, for her. And we are expected to come running. But do people come running when it's a male? How many people went in with me for my safety to turn these things into the sheriff's department? Well, let's think about this. There is, the very first one was Molly Smith. And thank goodness for that. And guess what? I had to talk to one of the deputies that I was trying to turn in. Molly Smith's suggestion, by the way, I did not feel comfortable with that, but that was Molly Smith's suggestion. And I went with it. And did they do anything about that? No, they didn't. They keep changing the rules and changing the laws depending on who it is. If I try to turn in one of my predators, I am denied the right to do so. And they keep on changing the rules. If I try to turn it in person, I did it wrong. If I try to do it over the internet, it's wrong. If I try to call them, it's wrong. No matter what I do, it's wrong. And then they keep on telling me the things they told me wrong previously are magically right now. Whatever it is that benefits them the most and allows them to get away with the crimes that they're committing. This is why I am an at-risk adult. Being a homeless, disabled male, I am physically disabled and I am mentally disabled. And the courts and the police and other predators like Leslie Snell have taken full advantage of this. These people wipe each other's asses for shit's sake. So, of course, let's press play.
So then he goes to remind her, you know, me splitting isn't the big problem either, because, you know, when I'm on an airplane and I can't split and you're hitting me, like, what am I supposed to do? And notice how she didn't deny it. She goes, you hit back. So don't pretend like you're innocent. Again, deflection. As soon as it comes close.
You hit back. She actually didn't deny it. She admitted it by saying you hit back. Now, pushing someone away who is physically assaulting you is not wrong. But when it's a police officer who you are trying to turn in and he and Deputy Lassen are assaulting you, you can't push them away. Meanwhile, without the body cameras, again, making it their word versus mine. Their word versus mine. They are removing the actual evidence of the situation and making it their word versus mine, and they automatically win in that scenario. Which is why the actual evidence needs to be entered in, and it does need to be heard. See, here's the thing that Judge Weimer is not paying attention to, is that I have been repeatedly abused by Scott DaCosta and other law enforcement for trying to turn in my predators, such as Leslie Snell. They broke the law. They knew that they were breaking the law. And then they broke the law some more to hide the fact that they broke the law. And then they got other people to help them to get away with breaking the law. Now, there's also the fact that in the recordings with Sergeant Jones, she claims that she didn't know nothing about that back in 2018. But her name is the one that William Burr pulls out of his ass. If she was supposed to call me, why didn't she? Why didn't she? Now, she later did call me from a number that is not restricted. Meanwhile, I had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I had over 200 restricted numbers call me in one day. Just one day, and that is recorded. The actual event itself, not word of mouth, not their word versus mine, but straight up fact. Those calls were made repeatedly to me while I was attempting to call my Aunt Mary. You can see an example of how I couldn't call my Aunt Mary because of the massive quantity of restricted calls, one after the other. Blam, 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 blam. Like there was a group of people doing this. And then in these Facebook groups and these YouTube groups, there are people saying, hey, let's all complain about this. Let's all do this. That shows clear gang stalking. This is against the law. This is something that the FBI is supposed to be doing something about. And this is an extremely severe case of it. And of course, the stonewalling and the deflection. Well, if I'm getting all of these restricted calls, what am I supposed to do? Don't answer them, they tell me. But then I say, all right, with all these restricted calls, if you are calling me from a restricted number, how am I supposed to know that the one time that you call me, if you actually did so, which they have shown no proof that they actually did so, on that one call that you called me as an officer from a restricted number, how am I supposed to tell that one number from the rest of them? Oh, well, you should answer it. Is this not conflicting advice? And that's the problem with people giving me advice instead of looking at evidence and turning it in. That's the problem with people giving me advice and throwing tantrums when I can't follow their advice. It's don't answer the restricted calls, do answer the restricted calls, change your phone number. I changed my phone number, and the first thing Leslie Snell did was try to retaliate by giving out my phone number. Meanwhile, the actual evidence of the calls to her prior that show that she was aware of it, she did know that I was getting those restricted calls and restricted numbers, that it was interfering with my ability to call anyone out. Yes, this is something that there is evidence of on my YouTube channel. There is also the evidence on my YouTube channel of Scott DaCosta telling me that Leslie Snell is pissed off about that. That's because he was explaining to me about the First Amendment, how it's not illegal for me to record calls with people. And of course, they want to play victim and throw themselves on the ground and flail their arms in the middle of the supermarket because you busted them in a lie. Leslie Snell was aware that I record these things live. She absolutely 100% was aware that what she was doing was putting me at risk. 100%. She was intentionally reading my number out, despite the fact that I informed her that that deputy, Sean Holloway, already had my number. Now, I've got to deal with Marcia Estrada backpedaling because she is a mandated reporter, and so is Penny Cooper. But there's also the fact that I've already recorded the things that she said about how Duval County Sheriff Scott DaCosta is doing this to a woman in town as well. Marcia Estrada says in that I am not delusional, that I am not schizophrenic, that I'm not bipolar. She says that, well, PTSD and trauma responses, well, can mask itself as bipolar, but only slightly. She doesn't say the only slightly part. That's the issue with me going back and forth between speaking like this and having a severe fucking meltdown because I'm not getting help in person. Now, there are many people who have assisted me in person with sorting my paperwork and resorting it and sorting it again. And there are actually people who have assisted me in taking all of those pictures of that evidence. But someone actually sitting down with me and looking at it with me, the only person who has made that attempt to this day, the only person who has actually made that attempt is Mandy Singer. That's it. All of these web sleuths who claim that they would help me if I sent them the evidence. And then later on they say, well, I haven't seen it. Really? I sent it to you. Some of those people verified that that evidence was sent, that they could see it, and then later on made claims that they hadn't seen it. Well, did you or didn't you? If you're telling me that you did see it, and then you're telling me that you didn't see it, Did you magically unsee it? Or did you lie to me about seeing it? And that's the great thing about recording people. Their memories are flawed, especially after something this long term. With me being stonewalled, threatened, harassed, and assaulted for trying to turn in officers, and then denied access to the body cameras that show that because I don't have the money for a lawyer, this very much shows that they are taking full advantage of my disabilities, including my financial disabilities, trying to live on $800 a month now. It was just a little bit under $700 a month. That's right. I was living on $674 a month before Natalie was killed. That's what I had to try to live on. Now, I also got my back payments. Now, where did those back payments go? Where did that money go? It went to traveling to court dates that I had when I was the one assaulted. Meanwhile, these people want to inject drugs into me that are mind-altering drugs, that are dangerous to put into another human being, and then play victim. They want to laugh at me. Now, of course, the Clearview situation. In the videos from Clearview, it very clearly shows that the people that are in that video are and taking part in this, taking part in the assaults, and taking part in laughing at me when I'm still trying to get the police there. They are laughing at me. These are supposed to be medical professionals, and they are laughing at me in the videos. Now, by not having sound recording at Clearview, they can put whatever narrative that they want to that. Now, I'm going to go to Clearview. Clearview Behavioral Health. And the reason for this is because one of the videos, I want to show you two of them. All right, this one right here. Copy link address. This woman, who is their informant, the woman who is on the cover of this, is the one in the video who is laughing. Her and Mr. Manbun. They're laughing about the situation where they have just assaulted me. And meanwhile, the video doesn't show that. It doesn't show how I got to the timeout room there. It starts off after I have been in the timeout room, already been assaulted. And it also shows me hiding underneath the fucking mattress because I am scared of them. Meanwhile, they had a history of doing this prior to me being there, and they killed a man there. Tybra Hatay was killed at Clearview Behavioral Health. They were closed down literally for the things that I was speaking out about, and I wasn't heard. I was treated like I was mentally ill. Nasty. Not okay. Now this is a 33-minute long video, and we're only 6 minutes into it. And I'm showing you how these situations also apply to my case. When you look at these situations with these law enforcement, that's exactly what they're doing. They're exhibiting classic narcissistic behaviors, refusing to acknowledge the safety risks that I am having to deal with, pretending that they don't exist, denying me the right to turn in a police report, pretending that I didn't turn in one. See, here's the thing about making a photocopy. Most times I could not make a photocopy of what it is that I was turning in. On one occasion, Scott DaCosta did take a photocopy in that office of my paperwork against Ted Bollinger. But guess what? He never turned it in. Where did that go? Where did the other ones go? Why is it that they were not turned into the courts? Why is it that Scott DaCosta, being the person who is supposed to serve these things to people, why is it that he had me turn them into him? He should have known that I needed to turn it into Joan Hanson. Now, the first recording that I have with Joan Hanson, she doesn't explain jack shit. The closest that she gets to explaining it is telling me that I need to fill it out, and when I'm done filling it out, the Dual County Sheriff is the one who has to turn it in. Or not turn it in, but the person who has to serve it. Well, here's the thing. Ted Bollinger is not in Dual County. I'm trying to get a protection order against this man, and I'm trying to do it in Dual County because this is where I am. Now, where is it that Natalie Bollinger got her protection order? In Adams County. I wasn't even in Adams County. I made 0 calls, sent 0 emails. I did absolutely nothing from Adams County. Again, showing that they continually change the rules based on who it is. Meanwhile, I didn't have any help. I had people treating me completely like shit for trying to get help. Pierre Byron treated me completely like shit for trying to get help. Ryan treated me completely like shit for trying to get help. Kayla Trujillo treated me completely like shit for trying to get help. Now, all these people wanting to backtrack. Well, it makes perfect sense why they would want to. Any idiot can tell that if I'm trying to turn in an officer and they send that specific officer to my door, that is a safety risk. If I am trying to turn in Scott DaCosta and they send Scott DaCosta to my door, that is a safety risk. And those safety risks of not having someone in person and it coming down to the wire presented for me a very clear mental health issue, because I was in a constant state of fear with their sheriff's department or their police department there knocking on my door at my hotel room in McCook. Yes, that very much scared me too. I was not able to get back to sleep as a result of it. So then I'm dealing with sleep deprivation, plus the after effects of having a fucking panic attack. A severe panic attack. I get on YouTube because there is no other option. People think that I should shut up and not get on YouTube. No, the right thing to do is to speak out. The right thing to do is to show the truth. If the things that all of these witnesses, like Kayla Trujillo and Katie Cahill and others, if these things are true, then they should have said that to begin with. They should have admitted those things to begin with. Instead of making me out to be some sort of fucking nut job telling stories of things that never happened. Allowing me to be given the mentally ill treatment. Kayla Trujillo knew a lot more than she admitted to in the courts. Why? Because she never went to the courts with this. She never made a police report about things that she knew were ongoing. Katie Cahill never made a police report about the things that she knew were ongoing. I was pissed off because I'm being abused because they are not telling the truth. These people who knew that these things were happening did not come forward, did not tell the truth, and outright lied to me. Like Katie Cahill claiming that she would, defend me in court. How? Katie Cahill was calling me from restricted numbers. She was hiding her number. So I can't give her number to law enforcement. That's gaslighting, and that is stonewalling. I needed somebody who was not going to bullshit me. If these things were true, she needed to write it down and turn it in, and I needed a copy. Because as I am not heard, because all they have to do is call me mentally ill, many people speaking up and showing the truth and admitting these things are happening, whether those people are mentally ill or not, is arbitrary. It's many witnesses of it. While many people were calling me at once with restricted numbers and I couldn't get a hold of my Aunt Mary as a result of it, there is no way that one person is going to be able to do that unless they have 8 phones. Click, 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 click. Let's see. Adam Mia Fitness Gaming L typed, "Hi, would you say most perpetrators of domestic abuse are narcissistic?" No, I wouldn't. I'd say that most perpetrators of domestic abuse are scared of getting in trouble. See, that's something important to note as well. I mean, that's a clear human motivation. That's a very clear motivation for all of these people, not wanting to get in trouble. As far as most perpetrators of domestic abuse being narcissistic, I don't think so. I think primarily we train people to be narcissistic. In specific, we train girls that it is okay to be psychotic and narcissistic and game playing. Women are not inherently like that. Men are not inherently like that. We have the same emotions, we have the same behaviors, but many of the behaviors that are perpetrated by women are perpetrated by women specifically because they know they're going to get away with it. It's kind of like demasculization in public. When a woman hits a man in public in front of all of his friends at a party or at the park in Boulder, Colorado, like Crystal Beauchamp did, whether you're dating or not, you're being assaulted. And when you're being assaulted by a woman, if you push her to get her away from you so that she can't hurt you, so that she can't cause you physical harm, you get in trouble as the male. If she is assaulting you in front of your friends, she's doing it because she knows that. She knows that you can't hit her back. You can't even push her away or you are the bad guy. But you are also demasculated because immediately afterward, you have to deal with people making fun of you, teasing you, and lowering you down to a lesser human being in their eyes because you got beat up by a girl. Now, in many cases, the narcissistic behaviors come after the domestic assault. See, narcissistic behaviors don't necessarily denote that somebody is a narcissist. Narcissistic behaviors could ultimately be because somebody doesn't want to get in trouble. That's why they are deflecting. That is why they are stonewalling. Being a narcissist, however, is about being absolutely right. For me, in these situations that I was in, I am absolutely right. There is no argument there at all. Anybody who is not there who wants to argue with me about it is exhibiting narcissistic behaviors because they're not hearing what it is that I'm telling them. And then they want to claim that I'm not hearing what they're saying. I'm hearing what they're saying loud and clear. Johnny Depp and that is hearing what Amber is saying loud and clear. You can hear in his voice that he's afraid to even speak up, but he does so anyway. You also get to hear how Amber curses at Johnny Depp, and Johnny Depp does curse back. Is it wrong for Johnny Depp to curse? I mean, obviously, I get treated like I'm a horrible person if I curse. Is it okay for Johnny Depp? If it is okay for him and not for me, then why? Adam Mia Fitness and Gaming L type, thank you. Well, you're welcome. Adam Mia Fitness and Gaming L typed, were most abusers abuse themselves? In many cases, yes. Some of the numbers as far as sexual abuse shows that up to 70% of sexual abusers were abused as children. Up to 70% of physical or of sexual abusers were sexually abused. So it's a taught behavior and a learned behavior. Let's see. Adam Mia Fitness and Gaming or witnessed abuse. In some cases, yes. In some cases, there are things that aren't actually technically abuse, like let's say your babysitter and her boyfriend making out, and you see those behaviors. Nobody's stopping them, nobody's telling them that it's bad, and then you go try it with somebody else. You haven't been explained that this is a wrong behavior. What you know is that you've seen mommy and daddy kissing, or you've seen mommy and daddy having sex, and you think that that's something that humans just naturally do. And they do for reproductive purposes. But at the same time, you really have to be a sick minded person to do that to a child. Now, for a child who hasn't been explained that that is wrong, they may go perpetrate against another child. They may get into a lot of trouble for perpetrating against the other child when they didn't know they were doing anything wrong to begin with. When it comes to physical abuse, yes, in many cases, children who are physically violent, it's because they've lived physical abuse or observed physical abuse and learned it. One example that I can give. All right, you got the little girl who's on the playground and the little boy that hits her, or vice versa. Now you've got the little girl who gets hit on the playground, and she goes to tell on the boy who hit her. Now, the little boy, if nothing is done to correct that behavior, thinks that it's okay and will do it again. And the more he gets away with it, the more frequently he is going to do so. So when the little girl goes to her mommy and daddy and says, hey, that boy hit me, and mommy and daddy say, oh, well, that just means he likes you, you are teaching that little girl that abuse means that somebody likes you. The more abuse that they put you through, the more they must like you. And that little boy, you're reinforcing his belief that it's okay for him to hit your little girl, and you're reinforcing the belief that he's going to get away with it. And that's what I'm dealing with Leslie Snell and Scott DaCosta and the Nazi court system here in western Nebraska. Pretty blonde-haired, blue-eyed white girls are the best person to put on the stand because everybody wants to believe a pretty face. And that is true. That is a statistic. You know, nothing passes a lie better than a pretty smile. Let me show you how pretty my smile is. That's right. I don't have a single tooth in my head. Adam Mia, Fitness and Gaming L typed, you know a lot, Sean, very intelligent man. I grew up in the system being beaten and raped. So you take classes while you're in the system, while you're at some place like Centennial Peaks or Fairfax. Those of you who have watched the movie Patch Adams, that's Fairfax Mental Hospital at the very beginning of that movie. I was in Fairfax Mental Hospital for trying to turn in my dad. Yeah. And from Fairfax, they transferred me to Orcas Cottage at Child Study and Treatment Center in Tacoma, Washington. Now, Fairfax is in Kent, Washington. Now, I was a very young child at this point. You know, when I was at Centennial Peaks, I was 6 years old, almost 7. And the thing is that when you're in those places, like me, when I was in there, according to the story that my mom told me, is that I threw a desk at a teacher. But here's the thing, I was in foster care. My very first foster home was great. It was a wonderful family outside of Scottsbluff, Nebraska. And the reason that I was there is because my mom wasn't allowed to have me because she was on cocaine. She was in court appointed rehab. My dad, he also, well, he was actually in prison for 38 counts of cocaine possession with intent to sell. And while I was in Washington State a few years ago, my dad also admitted that he bought an AR-15 and sold it to an undercover officer. It wasn't just cocaine, right? A narcissist will go back to something that happened 20 years ago to try to win an argument. And then they tell you that you have to let something go that happened 20 minutes ago. Or recent abuse, like maybe 2 weeks ago. And after you've been abused, there is the honeymoon period where they want to tell you they love you and so on and so forth, and they'll never do it again, and they are so sorry, and it'll never happen again. And then this is stuff that you are taught in the classes that you have to go to in places like Centennial Peaks. These are also classes that you have to go to in the juvenile facilities. These are classes that you have to go to in many places when you're in foster care. You are required to go to these classes. Now, some of the classes, like at Fairfax, we have the sexual abuse group. Now, whether you are a victim of sexual abuse or not, you are in this group. And many of the girls who are trying to tell on their abusers, in specific, most of the time it was their father, and they've got cuts on their arms. And of course, the staff at that facility are going to deflect those children. We were children at the time, mind you. Children, very small children, learning these things. This is stuff that we learned when we were very young, and it does stay with us for the rest of our lives. Like what you're supposed to be doing about bullies. This is something that I learned as a child. We got taught this crap in kindergarten. If you're being bullied, you tell the bully how it makes you feel and ask them to stop. If the bullying is because of a rumor, you go to the source of the rumor. If that doesn't work, you're supposed to go to an authority figure. And or you're supposed to go to your friends. And if that doesn't work, you're supposed to go to an authority figure. Now, number 2 and 3 on that, your friends and the authority figure are interchangeable. It depends on where you're at. When we were in Washington State, it was taught in one way, and we were in Colorado, it was taught another way. But you're in those groups as a child, and you're there with those girls who are cutting on themselves, and these staff members want to ask, why are you here? Well, because I told on my dad for abusing me. No, you're here because you were cutting on yourselves. They will change the answer for you, just like that Judge Weimer did. He changed the words and restated it as something differently entirely. Now, my intelligence, you typing that I'm a very intelligent man, that's a no-brainer. That's pretty easy to tell. But when I'm having a panic attack or a severe panic attack or a meltdown, you're not going to know me for being intelligent. You're going to know me for speaking like Porky Pig. That's all, folks. And that's the problem with anxiety. especially when in a severe anxiety state. Now, a lot of the things that we were taught as a child, a lot of the things that I was told that I had as a child, were literally side effects of medications that I was on. And when I got off of those medications at 17 years old, those issues ceased to exist. Now, trauma responses, those are not particular nor specific to people who are autistic. My trauma responses, they're not autistic traits, they're trauma responses. These trauma responses are trauma responses they're the same responses that you have if you are sexually abused long term or physically abused long term. And that's the key right there. These are all long term abuse, long term sexual abuse, long term physical abuse, long term emotional abuse, long term psychological abuse. That is often considered emotional abuse, but some people actually classify them differently depending on where you're at. So, what we're dealing with in my situation is I have to deal with stonewalling. I have to deal with severe narcissistic behaviors. That doesn't necessarily mean that these people are narcissists. They're exhibiting narcissistic behaviors because they don't want to get in trouble. They're working together with their buddies in order to get away with it. Leslie Snell didn't want to get in trouble. She didn't want me to be able to turn her in for the crimes that she committed. And as a result, she worked together with someone else who I was trying to turn in and was being stonewalled from doing so and gaslighted long term as a result. This is not okay. Now, obviously, I got to wrap this up. It's an hour and 6 minutes long. This is the best that I'm capable of functioning at the moment. I'm getting pretty tired. I did lay down and try to take a nap, but of course, I have to be afraid. I'm in Dual County. I have to be afraid that these officers will break the law again, will abuse their power, and manipulate a judge in order to get away with these things. Now, I wasn't sure if this judge was manipulated or if he was, well, a part of this. And based on court, it's obvious that he was a part of this. That this is something where he is doing what's called professional courtesy. Now, I'm going to give you an example of professional courtesy. Let's say you've got a police officer and he pulls somebody over who's swerving back and forth, and he gets to that person's window, and the window rolls down, and he can smell that booze just barreling out of the vehicle, but he recognized this as a fellow officer, and he allows that officer to go home. Well, that is a very clear violation of the law, but it's professional courtesy. And what Judge Weimer did is a very clear violation of the law. What Judge Randon Rowland did is a very clear violation of the law. Now, there are very special rules that they make, like in Colorado, for example, there are special rules for the special courts. If you're called mentally ill, then they hold court without court observers. Nobody is allowed in your court. It's just you, your public pretender, the DA, a bailiff, and of course the judge. So there is nobody there on your behalf, nobody there to defend you, nobody there to, if these people break the law in the court, there is nobody to speak up that, yes, this judge broke the law, the DA broke the law, and of course, your public pretender broke the law. It's a coordinated effort when you're broke. When you're broke, your public pretender is not on your side. And you do need to know that. A court-appointed attorney is not on your side. If you are lucky enough to get one who's on your side, they're probably going to get on the judge's bad side. And if they get on the judge's bad side, then the cases that they want to trade to get a win, they're still going to lose. Like the DA will sometimes they'll trade with the public defender. They'll trade cases, like basically like trading baseball cards. Hey, I'll give you 5 homeless convictions if you let me get this woman who got busted selling meth and has 2 kids. If you let her off, you can have these 5 homeless people. They don't want to go through the motions of court. They don't want to do any of the actual work that is involved. They're already overwhelmed. All right, so y'all be safe, stay out of trouble, or don't get caught. Peace.